Committee on Rules Administration to order. It is 12:31 p.m. on June 5th, and a quorum is present. Good afternoon, members. It is good to be together. We are meeting for the purpose today of approving a number of documents that serve an administrative purpose for both members and staff. Those documents have been shared with you. And before we take action, perhaps I will turn this to Secretary Bodden and Ms. Stengel for an explanation.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I can get started. I hope the audio is coming through clearly. It's been a while. Great. First of all, let me say, these are all matters related to staff compensation, and I truly appreciate the Rules Committee making itself available to take care of these matters promptly after the close of session. It will allow us to take care of these items in a more orderly manner with a little bit of time to deal with them, and that's always appreciated. I'm just going to proceed in the order you have on the agenda, Madam Chair, and maybe, leaving space for questions and, of course, action on those items separately. I'll begin with the document that's labeled a committee resolution, labeled CR 012-1. This resolution does three things. These have all been done. They were taken care of in pretty much this fashion last session, at the end of the last session. The first provision on lines 1.6 to 1.13 permits any employee to elect to convert up to 40 hours of vacation or comp time for cash, a one-time payout of cash. The next item is shown on lines 1.14 to 1.23 and provides the authorization for a deferred compensation conversion of up to 50 hours of either compensatory time or vacation time into the employee's deferred comp account, and also permits in the alternative the standard Senate match of $1,150 as provided in the LCC benefit book. The third item is handled slightly differently here. It's the technology and communication stipend of $50 per month for both permanent and temporary employees. Recently, this has been handled in 6 months installments. The version that's drafted here would permit taking care of the entire fiscal year at one time. That's the essence of the CR 12-1 resolution. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Secretary Bodden. Members, do we have questions? And if you have a question, raise your hand or give a shout. All right, seeing no questions, shall we proceed to a motion? Senator Rest, thank you. You're on mute, Senator Rest.
So, Madam Chair and Mr. Bodden, when you say that to pay for the fiscal year, is that looking backward or looking forward?
Madam Chair and Senator Rest, I'm sorry, I didn't make that very clear. Yeah, this authorizes continuation of the technology stipend for Senate employees for what is in effect fiscal year 25, beginning July 1st, 2024 through 2025.
And so is that still done $50 a month, or okay, it's not just
That's
one,
correct.
It's not a total figure in anticipation of working a whole year.
Madam Chair, Senator Rest, that's correct. Apologize.
Okay.
I did not explain that very clearly.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Mr. Bodden.
Thank you, Senator Rest. Are there other questions? If no further questions, Senator Rest, shall we move to a motion? Senator Rest moves to approve Committee Resolution 12.1.
Madam Chair.
Senator.
Can I request a roll call for that, please?
Yeah. Senator Friends, thanks for that. I think because we're virtual, it probably makes the most sense that we do roll call votes and then they're recorded. Seeing no further questions, I renew the motion. Senator Rest moves to approve Committee Resolution 12.1. Can the clerk please take the roll?
Of course. Chair Murphy.
Yes.
Vice Chair Rest.
Yes.
Ranking Member Johnson. Senator Champion.
Aye.
Senator Eichhorn.
Aye.
Senator Friends,
Yes.
Senator Limmer,
Aye.
Senator Marty,
Yes.
Senator Miller,
Aye.
Senator Pappas. Eight yeses.
Thank you, Ms. Kesey. There being 8 ayes and no nays, the motion is adopted. Thank you. Secretary Badger.
So, Madam Chair and members, I think the next item on the agenda is the Senate roster. The Rules Committee takes care of this annually. The roster that you have distributed to you is dated June 5th. I'll make just some general remarks about it that I just want to make sure, in dealing with a document like this, that if possible, the committee attempts to keep any questions, discussion to a general nature and avoid references to specific individuals, et cetera. There are certainly plenty of questions that could deal with items of a more general nature. And if there is anything individual, I'd suggest that taking that up offline. The document is a snapshot in time, just deserves the appropriate caveats that way. It's an ever-changing document. There's ordinary staff turnover, for one. There are promotions related to the job field an employee might be in that could, I haven't reviewed it, but they could begin as soon as tomorrow. So it's the point I want to make is it's a fluid document. And please keep that in mind. Another point to be made is that there's a great deal of, there are many pieces of information in this document, and the Senate staff who've worked on this and our HR director, Darren Hoff in particular, have made every effort to be as thorough and careful as possible. And I think it is a very accurate document, but if at any time you see any discrepancies or have concerns, please bring those to our attention. That can be very helpful as well. Having said that, you have the document before you. I can, I think it speaks for itself, but if I can take care of any questions, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Secretary Badger. Members, are there questions on the roster?
I have a question.
Senator Limmer.
As I'm looking down the roster myself, I'm looking at, for example, legislative assistant 1 level. There seems to be a wide spectrum of pay scale for a beginning legislative assistant. Could someone explain why there's such a wide spectrum of pay?
Madam Chair and Senator Limmer, I'd be happy to. Beginning several years ago, I want to say about 2018, the Senate moved to a compensation system that permits starting compensation to be adjusted based on the experience of the employee being hired. It was felt that would improve, the Senate's competitiveness in the job market. So that's certainly one factor. Another factor might be a length of experience an individual had in that role, 1, 2, or 3. Obviously, if they have an additional year of experience, they may have been eligible for an increase that way. And then another relatively recent innovation, I think dating back to about, again, the 2018 timeframe, has been a regular annual use of merit compensation, and that could vary sometimes with some degree of significance between individuals as well. So those are the factors that come to mind immediately that would explain differences, the differences you're talking about.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Badger. Thank you, Senator Limmer. Are there other questions on the roster? Senator Marty.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Badger. Do you know how first of all, the lowest legislative assistant salary, how low is it, and how has that been doing vis-a-vis inflation over the past few years? Do we know that?
Secretary Badger.
So what I don't have in front of me, Madam Chair and Senator Marty, is the range minimum for that position. I may be able to get some information from the Senate's HR director, and we could bring Darren Hoff into the, here we go. he's helping me out. The range minimum, and I'm not saying this is what appears on the roster, but is 37,877. My experience in working with this has been that almost, in most cases, people are bringing significant experience with them to the Senate and are hired above that minimum. I feel confident saying in most cases, I would say, almost all of the time. As far as keeping up with inflation, there have been adjustments made last year. There was a significant increase to attempt to bring it in line. And I think, just speaking very generally, last year, the range minimum moved in a fashion that I think certainly addressed inflation. It's hard to think about, beginning and ending points in measuring these things. This year, part of the backdrop for this meeting is the increases that were approved for this year by the Rules Committee at the end of last session. Those will take effect. There's a 3% across the board increase for all employees, plus a merit increase that will be available as well. I believe that's up to 3.5%. So I just want to highlight those things for you in thinking about how that salary would keep pace with inflation. The range minimum will be adjusted by 3%. Obviously, it's not subject to a merit increase. So those are some factors you might want to consider in thinking about that. I think the other test, and maybe not, I'm not the one best equipped to answer it, but what the experience has been in hiring. I know that I've had general feedback that salary changes made by the Senate greatly improved the Senate's competitiveness in the last year or two.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, just a comment that I think you're right that there have been some good improvements in the last couple of years, but I also I hope, especially at the bottom end of the range for the lowest paid employees, that I think we have to try and keep working on that to move that up further. But thank you.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Any other questions on the roster? I want to make sure I'm not missing any hands. All right. And Senator Marty, would you be willing to move the staff roster? Senator Marty moves to approve the Senate employee roster dated June 5th, 2024.
Madam Chair,
Senator Friends.
I would request a roll call. I think a roll call again is probably better for a Zoom meeting like this.
Thank you, Senator Friends. Any questions? Then I'll renew the motion. Senator Marty moves to approve the Senate employee roster dated June 5th, 2024. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Murphy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rest,
Yes.
Lee Johnson, Senator Champion,
Aye.
Senator Icorn,
Aye.
Senator Franz,
Yes.
Senator Limmer,
Yes.
Senator Marty,
Yes.
Senator Miller,
Yes.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you. There being 8 ayes and no nays, that motion is adopted. The next issue on our agenda is the travel policy. Secretary Bodden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I get started with the travel policy, I realize I gave Senator Marty incorrect information about the range minimum for the LA1 position. I've had further information that I think after the changes last year, it was adjusted to 46,271. That fits with my sense of the increased competitiveness. So I'm happy to report that to you. But it's an illustration of where it's sat before the actions taken by the Rules Committee last year. Moving to the travel policy, the document you have before you would amend the Senate policy on travel approval and expenses. It has been some time since any changes were made to the policy, which over time, the practice has varied somewhat from the policy. There is an understanding and agreement among the Management Advisory Committee that would really work best to make this as efficient as possible in terms of the approval process. The existing policy refers to approval by a committee chair, approval by a supervisor, approval by the chair of the Rules Committee. It can be very bureaucratic. So the changes that you see in the travel request form portion of the policy, on the second page of the policy, the prior approval portion are an effort to streamline the policy and require simply the approval of the respective caucus leader or the Secretary of the Senate or the Director of Senate Council as appropriate. There's a reference to the interim budget set by the Committee on Rules and Administration for committee travel. This is another feature where it was felt it would be worked best simply to strive to reach an agreement with the Management Advisory Committee they are relatively small budgets for these purposes, but obviously it's a significant activity and it's simply more nimble to do it this way. And in fact, it's more or less the way it's worked for quite some time. Individual budgets being set in the Rules Committee for travel for particular committees hasn't occurred for decades. So that's a very quick review of what's in the changes to the travel policy. I'm happy to go into more detail if members would like further information.
Thank you, Secretary Bodden, and I do want to thank you for the work on this, among the other things that we're talking about today, in terms of, as you have been, professionalizing and standardizing policies and procedures for the Minnesota Senate. And this is another good example of that. I appreciate it. Are there questions for Secretary Bodden?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you. Mr. Bodden, during the past, it seems like there's always been, for lack of a better policy, kind of an assumption that every senator would be, it's not out of line for one senator to have one excursion somewhere on behalf of the work of the Senate. Is that a hard and fast rule? Is it a rule at all? Is it something that changes from one majority leader to another?
Madam Chair and Senator Limmer, I think I'm going to use the term professional development to describe the activities you're referring to. I would not say that it's a hard and fast rule. However, the budgets that are developed and have been used basically are set on a certain amount per member. Not all members are interested in accessing, the opportunity to attend a seminar or what have you. So obviously those amounts vary somewhat. But what I can't tell you, or what I should say doesn't exist, is an absolute right for a member to a certain budgeted amount for professional development and related travel.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Limmer. And as I have reviewed these budgets with Secretary Bodden, they are equitably distributed among the caucuses.
Right. That's my experience too.
Are there further questions? All right, then, seeing no further questions, Senator Marty, would you be willing to move this policy? Senator Marty moves to approve the changes to Senate Policy 3.05 relating to travel approval and expenses. Senator
Madam
Friends.
Chair, I'd request a roll call for the same reason as before.
I appreciate that, Senator Frentz. I renew the motion. Senator Marty moves to approve changes to Senate Policy 3.05. All those in favor, the clerk will take the roll.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair Murphy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rest,
Yes.
Lead Johnson,
Yes.
Senator Champion,
Aye.
Senator Eichhorn,
Aye.
Senator Friend,
Yes.
Senator Limmer,
Yes.
Senator Marty,
Yes.
Senator Miller,
Aye.
Senator Pappas. 9 yeses.
Thank you. There being 9 ayes and no nays, that motion is adopted. Thank you. We have one last policy, and that's the interim travel expense letter. Secretary Bodden.
Madam Chair and members, what you have before you is a document that has traditionally been provided to the Rules Committee for its review and approval. What this document is in large part represents an effort to compile from several different sources a summary of the various expense reimbursement policies applicable to member activities during the interim. This version of that memo is very similar to what was distributed last year and the year before that. I think the one significant change I want to call to your attention is, in effect, a conforming change under the in-state and out-of-state travel guidelines. What I will say briefly is this memo has been revised to reflect the changes that were made to the travel policy just now. Beyond that, I'm happy to take questions about any particular changes, and if Ms. Stengel has any suggestions about anything else to include in the summary here. Okay, it looks like we're good on that, so I'll take any questions.
Members, do you have questions for Secretary Bodden?
Madam Chair,
Senator Limmer.
I must be really inquisitive today. Mr. Bodden, in 2011, if my memory serves me correctly, our per diem payment was reduced from $96 to $86 in that year. But prior to that, it was $96. How long previously was it at $96?
Secretary Bodden.
Madam Chair and Senator Limmer, you're testing me here. What I want to say is the adjustment to $96, I want to say, was made during the time when Senator Poggemiller was majority leader. So I think that would date to about 2007, right in that area. But I know I will advertise here for the Legislative Reference Library. They have a fantastic document that summarizes the history of per diem going back a long, long way that far exceeds my memory.
So the per diem was established roughly 17 years ago at $96 per day. All right, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Limmer. Are there other questions? And seeing no further questions, Senator Marty moves to
Yes, I'll move it.
moves to approve the interim travel expenses and per diem expense letter dated June 5, 2024.
Request a roll call.
Thank you, Senator Frantz. I'll renew the motion on the travel expenses and per diem expense letter dated June 5, 2024, and the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Murphy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rest,
Yes.
Lead Johnson,
Yes.
Senator Champion,
You say champion? I couldn't hear
Yes.
you. Yes. Aye.
Senator Icorn,
Yes.
Senator Friends,
Yes.
Senator Limmer,
Yes,
Senator Marty,
Yes.
Senator Miller,
Yes.
Senator Pappas. 9 yeses.
Thank you. There being 9 ayes and no nays, that motion is adopted. Thank you, members. Senator Marty.
Yeah, Madam Chair, since this is the meeting where we approve the roster and the pay and everything like that, I think it's appropriate because I think members of both caucuses understand how fortunate we are to have such wonderful staff, from our own caucus staffs to the nonpartisan staff and the legislative reference guide, all the joint staff as well. I think we are very, very fortunate at the Senate to have such good people, and I just think we as Rules Committee ought to make sure they know that, and so I just wanted to say it here.
I appreciate that, Senator Marty. Secretary Bodden.
And Madam Chair, I just wanted to say one more time, again, I really appreciate the work done by the Rules Committee and the willingness to meet on short notice here. I think the changes made in recent years to staff compensation, anecdotally and based on feedback I receive, are very, very, very welcome and truly appreciated by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Bodden and Ms. Stengel, for your work in pulling all of this together for us and making sure that we're able to support the staff who come to work and make the Senate such a tremendous place. I appreciate that very much. And seeing no further business before.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Yeah.
If I could just bring up a suggestion for the future. And that is, you and I had a discussion about a possible rule recognition in a private conversation we had in the waning hours of the session. And that was a question of allowing remote voting when one is a member of a conference committee and quite a distance away from the Senate chamber. I noticed that this last time I was on 2 conference committees, and it was a lot of footwork that our members had to go back and forth from the G level up to the chamber for one vote, and then turn around, go back, and no more than 10 minutes later, we're voting again. And with a tight margin in the Senate, a lot of the votes were roll calls. And if one could have an allowance for remote voting without being docked pay, that would be something that we should consider because we are all at work and we're in the building. And I think that might be something that, as long as we have remote voting, that would be an allowance that we could recognize sometime in the future.
Thank you, Senator Limmer, for raising that now and for the conversation that we had in the waning days. I really appreciate that. And I think that is a good idea and worth our consideration.
All right. Thank you.
Senator Frantz.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank you, Senator Limmer, for opening the door a tiny bit for discussions about how we go forward. I know we're all equally interested in the success of the chamber, of showing respect and appreciation for the staff. And I want to just add to the list other items we might discuss about possible rule changes, including consideration of the staff and including some of our rules about the length of speaking. Senator Limmer, count on my support for the type of change you seem to be looking for on conference committee members, and hope we can have some dialogue a little bit broader maybe at some point. Madam Chair, certainly interested in helping if there's a group talking about getting together along those lines, and welcome some of those discussions maybe before January. Just my 2 cents, Madam Chair. Thank you again, Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Senator Frantz. I'm just surveying to see if there are other hands. Seeing no further, Senator Rest. Senator Rest, thank you.
Just very briefly, earlier this year, I started becoming very interested in adopting or moving toward adopting a Senate policy for staff regarding the use of artificial intelligence that might be similar to the one that's been adopted by the administration for their staff. And I'm still interested in pursuing that. And maybe by next January, being able to offer to the Rules Committee at least some guidelines that we might consider. And I too would, as Senator Limmer and Senator Frantz, if anyone else is interested in working on that with me, this is not trying to find bad guys. This is how it's setting policies for how our staff can feel comfortable using artificial intelligence in pursuit of their work and becoming more efficient and more effective. And I think it's working at in the administration, and I would like to see something similar happen for us. The administration's policies do not govern the legislative staff or the Senate staff, but I think we should consider it and maybe even do it as a bicameral activity through one of the joint commissions, if not our respective rules committee. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rest. And I know the work that you did in the interim last year was very inclusive. I appreciate that. All right. I thank everybody for gathering today to do the important work of the Minnesota Senate. Are there other comments or questions? Seeing no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.